I had a heart attack. And when you go through something that could have, killed you, it's amazing how quickly you can have what an alcoholic would refer to as a moment of clarity in terms of life priorities. Even as I'm sitting here working on this episode, I'm experiencing this feeling, the same as in that first week after, that if I only might have a week or a few days to live, I've got ideas and concepts that I desperately need to get in front of my community, and those come first. This is one of those videos. This is something I need people to see. And I'm going to do you the decency of being blunt with my point, but if you disagree, please stick around to hear the reasoning behind my arguments. Queer folk, if you aren't a risk to yourself or to those around you, get a goddamned gun. Like yesterday. We are past the point that I want to even have this conversation because the people who hate us are armed and eager, and they're getting closer and closer to modern-day Nazi Party stormtroopers. They are slowly and surely taking apart communities one by one. We will not be spared. And dear God, you do not need to have a degree in German history from 1939 to 1945 to know what the fuck's about to happen here. Before I go into the philosophy of self-defense and how self-defense does not contradict the ethical choice of non-violence, I'm going to start with simple pragmatism. I can't not. The bullets that will come at you and your family do not care what you think about guns, and you and yours deserve to survive. Period. Sometimes you have to focus on the forest fire for just a little bit and maybe skip past the forest and the trees. When your house is on fire, you don't debate Faust, you grab a fucking bucket. And do not mistake me, our collective fucking house is on fire. There are people at the top of our government who are actively pushing myths about trans people and queer folk because it's a way to demonize all of us. Actively criminalizing access to trans healthcare, referring to trans people as perverts, and literally throwing trans women in men's jails for nothing more than using the bathroom. And all of this is before they start hitting the gas on the hate. They have extraordinarily renditioned U.S. citizens, children with cancer, to foreign countries in order to spite their immigrant parents. They have flat out deported or renditioned people by mistake to torture prisons and are still refusing to return them. And again, it's not just cops. There's starting to become groups of random civilians being allowed to do this shit. I cannot stress this enough. It gets worse from here. The American version of the Einsatzgruppen is fucking coming. We have to get ready for what that's going to look like. The police do not have to do the frontline work. In fact, I would argue the most likely threat we will face will not be from the police, it will be from groups taking up the mantle that their dear leader has thrown down as a distraction. Make sure a decent percentage of the people in your community are hard targets and are carrying at public events. And since you don't want to fucking die in a concentration camp, you don't want to go to an El Salvador torture prison forever, and you don't want to be burned on your front lawn, I need you to understand how defending your home and your community should look. There is a simple, cold reality. Advancing is a disadvantageous move. Someone who advances has to take in a lot more information and process those things a lot faster than someone who holds a fixed position and waits for anyone to walk across a fixed line in space. And therein lies the rub. People deserve to live, and there is a terrible but acceptable peace that can come from the recognition and maintenance of that balance. That advancing on minority communities is only not easy when those communities are a hard target and can defend themselves from violent, oppressive hate. Peaceful existence and self-defense are not contradictory. In fact, I would go so far as to argue that self-defense is itself non-violent. You do not break a non-violent promise if you defend yourself. Non-violent philosophy and pacifism are specifically different concepts. Violence is defined in a lot of different ways. However, I happen to prefer the WHO definition, which is the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or against a group or community, which either results in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. This is, however, where a decent person needs to get fucking real with their own decency and maybe remember to hold themselves to a higher standard. You don't have a gun with the intent to do harm. You have it with the intent of protecting yourself, your family, and your friends. No actions you take will inherently push violence on someone else. Your intentions are not to hurt others. That is inherently non-violent. If you're confused about the difference, ask about what happens if the attacker merely leaves. Someone who is engaged in self-defense is not going to go hunting for the attacker. They are going to continue defending their home. Nobody dies. Now ask about what happens if the person defending themselves stops. The person attacking them is, well, attacking them in their home. They are already hunting, and continuing that is a possible, hell, likely next step. That is the difference. That is why self-defense is not inherently an act of violence. It is not contradictory to a non-violent ethical point of view. In fact, the ability to have a life that generates controversy or discord, or even which can be lied about and targeted, requires inherently the ability to meaningfully tell people who mean to end your life, no, you cannot do that. Not, I wouldn't want you to. Not, I will hide or avoid you. You cannot take my life. Attempting will result in your own hurt and potential demise. Otherwise, you have to inherently accept cutting off pieces of your existence to appease others. And that means you do not have a right to exist as you are, merely as others will allow. An ability to exist peacefully requires, by definition, the ability to survive. If you cannot survive, you do not have a life to continue. It is sometimes as brutally simple as that. But even if that isn't enough for you to justify your own survival, I hope remembering you did not choose this and your survival is not an act of violence will help you at least think less harshly of others who think so about both you personally and your community which they share. But that is going to be it for me. Sorry this episode took so long to get out. Again, I literally had a heart attack and I am still unpacking a lot of the stuff that was associated with that. Thank you to everybody who has supported me while I have been rebuilding. I literally would not be able to be here or be functioning or have even remotely close to the chance of recovery that I have now if I didn't have people supporting me and making sure I could, keep a roof over my head, keep going to doctors, afford ridiculously expensive medication. You don't have access to insurance, which I don't at the moment. And I want to say thank you to everybody who has been supporting this channel, especially everybody on my Patreon. The fact that y'all have been supporting me and allowing me to recover means the fucking world to me, and I cannot thank you enough for that. Gigantic shout out to Violet Riley and Molly McAllister, the two people from my shout out gang. But that's gonna be it from me. Stay dangerous, y'all. Keep each other safe. And remember, moral doesn't mean legal, and Stonewall was a fucking riot. Peace.